Hello and welcome. In this video we will be looking at what needs to be considered before planning a custom new build.
There are 7 points we want to look at. 1. The budget. 2. The size of the property. 3. The design. 4. Land location orientation. 5. Heating system heat distribution. 6. The importance of the finished plans. 7. The planning process. So let's dive into the first point. The budget. When beginning the exciting process of designing your custom new build, it is difficult to know the overall cost of the property at this stage, but it is important to know the budget available to you. This must include all aspects of the build, from the land costs and service connections, right up to light fittings and everything in between. Previously completed properties will give an idea of what is possible within your budget. You might be able to fund the project without additional funding, but most people require a mortgage. It is advised that you know what funds will be available to you from mortgage providers, so that you know exactly what funds you have to play with. Land costs can vary depending on location, and will dictate what is available to spend on the property itself from your budget. A buffer should be factored into the budget, to allow for unforeseen eventualities, which occur on most projects. Let's move on to the second point. The size of the property. It will be no surprise to you that the size of the property will very much affect the overall cost of the project. The greater the size of the property, the greater the cost. A square meter rate is often used to calculate the build cost, but this is an inaccurate way of pricing a property, as the design of the property can have huge cost implications, not accounted for in a square meter rate. It may surprise you to know that a smaller property can have a greater, real-time, square meter rate than a larger property, simply due to necessary costs getting diluted over a smaller area. It is worth noting a larger property will have higher overall heating running costs. On to the third point. The design. As mentioned in the previous point, the design of the property can have huge cost implications. The more complex the build is, the higher the build cost will be. For instance, a single-story box-shaped house will cost less to build than a single-story U-shaped house with the same floor area. Likewise, a 1.5-story house with a simple roof design will cost less to build than a 1.5-story house with a complex roof, with dormer windows of the same floor area. Vaulted ceilings etc. will also increase the build cost. The location and shape of the land that the property will be built on will more than likely dictate certain aspects of the design. For instance, what floor construction is used, whether it is a concrete floor or a joisted floor. There is inevitably a balancing act between the cost of the property and the design of the property, and there may need to be compromises to your envisaged design. The fourth point. Land location orientation. As stated in the previous point, the location and shape of the land that the property will be built on will more than likely dictate certain aspects of the design, like the construction of the floor. The design will also be dictated by the orientation of the house. It is always favorable to have the living areas with the greatest views, which often has the largest windows. This has positives and negatives. The picture frame views are certainly a positive, but larger windows have greater heat loss. On the flip side, it also allows for greater heat generation from the sun when the sun is out. Other items that will be affected by the land location orientation are the length of the road required. This can increase the cost of the access by quite a bit. If services aren't located nearby, there will be large fees required in getting the relevant services to your property. Now the fifth point. Heating systems heat distribution. Choosing the heating system is one of those decisions that can be difficult to make. There are so many different heating solutions out there, it can be difficult to decide between them. There is air-to-air heat pumps, air-to-water heat pumps, exhaust air heat pumps, pellet boilers, wood chip boilers, electric heaters, and so on. The heating system is different from the means of heat distribution. Take an air-to-water heat pump. It generates hot water for the domestic hot water, and hot water for heating. The hot water for heating then has to be distributed around the house. This can be done through radiators or underfloor heating. Underfloor heating is favored with a heat pump as it's a more efficient means of heat distribution. Whatever heating system and means of heat distribution you choose may impact on the design of the property, then having a cost implication. The sixth point. The importance of the finished plans. Once you have negotiated the design process taking into consideration costs, and have managed to come to a final draft, it is very important that that final draft is exactly what you are looking for. Once the plans go through planning and building standards, it is advised not to change anything from the plans in the construction of the property, as this will have cost implications, and depending on the changes needed, it could require additional consents from planning or building standards. Changes from the original plans are the single greatest cause of any extra charges from the builder, as everything was priced from the original plans. Changes to this inevitably will have cost implications, even down to extra sockets, etc. So it is very important to think of all aspects of the design before coming to the final draft. And lastly, the seventh point. The planning process. The planning process can be complex and time-consuming to fully complete. The process in most cases is unknown by the general public, which means they don't really know where to start when it comes to the planning process. The full planning process can take up to 1.5 years to complete, with any decrofting required taking just as long, if not longer in some cases. Decrofting can be in progress while the planning process is underway. The planning process can be a taxing one, but once you know the design and location of the property, and that it is within your budget, going by previous property designs and costs, the planning application will be applied for by your architect. This process will cost you a fee, which varies depending on the value of the property. Once you receive planning consent, decrofting can be processed, at the same time as the building warrant is applied for. Again, there will be a fee. At this stage it's a waiting game for the building warrant and decrofting. For clarification, planning consent means that the house you have designed can be built on the land identified. A building warrant means that the house you have designed has to be built as per the building warrant, including all specifications and engineer's requirements. Thanks for watching, and look out for more informative videos in the future.